Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about root problems in software development. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, what are the root causes of poor software development? Well, I don't want to get all too philosophical about this one, but I usually claim that it's down to two things. Number one is incompetence, and the other one is self-interest, usually. These are fairly broad stroke things, but I truly believe that most problems in human society, or most of the stuff that isn't working so well, is down to these two things in some shape or form. Which is, let me just make my case to you first. So the reason why I say that incompetence is the first one is because the problem of software development is that software development requires, one part, an enormous amount of technical knowledge, but it also requires an enormous amount of social talent or social skill as well. Because usually what happens is that if you're one or the other, you can't make effective progress, because if you only know the technical part, you often end up in the state where, paired with your other side, which is the selfishness, depending on how you define that, of course, you're not going to have the holistic understanding of what it is that you're trying to achieve in order to write effective software. And a person who only knows or only focuses on the actual coding itself does not feel the need to take a holistic responsibility and inform themselves enough to act with wisdom, because it becomes this perpetual thing where you look at yourself as just one person whose only responsibility is to do your part. The problem with that mindset is that that also makes you, it almost absolves you from any other responsibility to do what is necessary. And that is a very difficult situation, because an engineer who does not have this capacity to big picture thinking and actually connects with stakeholders and customers and so forth, they will end up writing the wrong code or creating a shitty solution. And then they will, depending on how what usually happens is that they will start pointing at their finger at other people. Oh, well, they are not competent. They don't know what they're doing. They should be knowing that as well. But when you have that mindset, when everybody looks at everybody else as being ultimately responsible for delivering on the vision or the thing that you're going to do, what happens is that nothing can be done. Because, as I said, all you care about is to do the thing that you are really good at, and you only care about contributing in the way that you feel comfortable with, which is very bad. It's not going to work. And on the other hand, if you're only social, well, then you're basically a manager. You can do talking, but you can't execute on anything, and that's very dangerous, especially when you're in a decision-making position, because you're ultimately ignorant of the actual thing that makes things happen. And so what I like to say is that if you're going to find someone who is a master of all the things in such a gigantic field with so many options and so much stuff going on as software development, and at the same time has the leadership, the social graces, and the ability to connect with people and sort of deal with stakeholders and all that stuff in one individual, what you have found there, my friend, is a walking demigod. You have found a person who is on par with the sort of talent that you see in the famous thinkers of our time. And I'm not saying that to say that a software developer is at the same level. I'm saying that it's extraordinarily rare to find a human who is gifted, so multi-dimensional, if that makes sense. And that brings us to what I argue is the ugly truth of software development, which we can't really solve today, and that is that there's no process that we can create that is, and this is a little bit capitalist, but there is no substitute for competency. And I'm not just talking about technical excellency. As I said, I'm talking about competence. Competence in the sense that you know what is necessary to execute effectively on the mission of whatever you're doing. And that is in software development not just a die-hard engineering problem, and it's not just a diasocial problem. It's a mixture of both, and very few people have the capacity to do both those things in a fairly equal measure at the master level. It is, as I said, it's on par with finding someone who is gifted to a point where they could be famous for that. And that's not scalable in an economy that works as ours, because it's like you're saying that our workforce has to be bred, basically, because that is in essence what you're talking about. The average worker does not want to spend a lifetime building up this necessary skills to do a job really, really well, and that is what is necessary in order to do software development really, really well. In essence, it's no different from football players or like sports people or something like that. It's a talent industry, and talent is not something that you learn in school and then you clock in 9 to 5. It is much more than that. So that's the one part. The other part is selfishness. What I mean by that is not necessarily that you're selfish all the time or things like that, but it's down to it's selfish behavior, laziness, things like that, where a lot of the motivation behind people doing work within IT is not necessarily because they want to help the company or they want to help their coworkers or they're here to do a really, really great job. They're here to get paid. They're here to do a job. They're here to, and if you give them the chance, it's sort of like, in a perfect world, everybody would eat more vegetarian meals and everybody would exercise more, but that's not what we are complaining about. We're complaining about that healthcare isn't, as affordable, even though, most of the more and more of the population is getting like obese, etc., etc. People are lazy as fuck when it's possible. And no person on average that I find, it's very difficult to find them at the very least, are the sorts of people who will go out and go the extra mile and do things not for themselves but because it's the right thing to do. And that is also something that is extremely important in order to achieve any meaningful goal within something like software development or similar sorts of things. There are people like that, it's just that they are a minority. You'll find these sorts of personality traits in volunteer workers, activists, or people who work pro bono to help someone out, or people who try to look out for other people, or they will work a few extra hours here and there just because, not because they're actually going to get paid for it, but because they feel like, I want to do a good job here. They have a literal an actual interest in doing things really, really well. And that selfishness that I'm talking about, the thing that usually happens is that people stop caring. As I said, they don't look at this as their problem. It's not their responsibility. They don't contribute in the way that they have the potential to act, but they don't. Not because, and mostly because there's nothing in it for them, or if they can't be bothered because they don't have the energy, etc., etc. These sorts of traits are what I find to be the main contributors to the root causes to poor software development, almost always. So what I want you to take away from this is that poor software development, the root causes, I would say, are incompetence and selfishness. And I would say that I will go one further and stick my neck out and say that I find these to be the main, if not the only, root causes to practically all human problems. Practically everything that is not going so well, it comes down to a symptom, or just symptoms of that someone somewhere is incompetent or can't actually execute effectively on a task or a mission or something, paired with that there are a lot of people who don't really give a shit about anybody except themselves, or the people they care about, or their own convenience, etc., etc. There are all these sorts of factors that play in here, but these are the main causes. And the way you combat this is, how do you combat anything like this? Well, you have to get competent, selfless, for the most part, or less selfish sorts of people into the right positions and empower them to execute and direct things in such a way that you create systematic, at least what I argue. You need to create scalable solutions that are applicable to people who are not geniuses, because we can't scale on genius. I'm sorry to say. The people who are really talented and really great and like make the world a better place are usually the people who come up with solutions that can be scaled to the masses, or like to be applicable, and like so forth and so forth, and sort of cater to these inherent flaws in most people. And these people are, well, nothing short of the best among us. Have a great day.